Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we will start with the second lecture in our course, which is phonetics and phonology. And today we are going to start with the second lecture. Just to correlate between the two lectures, last time I talked about the articulators that we do use in order to pronounce or to produce speech sounds. Today we are going to talk about some of these articulators, or all of them, and as such we can talk about what we call places of articulations. Places of articulation means the places, the articulators that we use in order to speak. Just to make it clearer, the idea, for example, lips are articulators because they are used, or places of articulation because they are used in order to speak. So if I say P or B, this means I'm talking about two sounds, the P and the B, which are bilabial. Once the air comes out of the body from the larynx, the first place to reach is what we call a glottal stop. In the glottal stop, we have what we call vocal folds. If these vocal folds are close together while the air is going out of the body, this means we're talking about, if they are close, we're talking about voiced sounds. But if these vocal folds are apart from one another, this means that the air passes easily, and as such we're talking about what we call voiceless sounds. And we can say, according to what I just have said, the first point at which the flow of air can be modified as it passes from the lungs is the larynx, the thing that I have just said. You can feel the front of this in here, the Adam's apple. In other words, we can say that this place is the first place of articulation, because we have some sounds that are pronounced or said depending on what we call the glottal stop. So we have a glottal stop sound, which is ah in Arabic, for example, or even in English in a word like wa'a. So this is the first place of articulation. Number two indeed says the same thing that I have just said, that the vocal folds found in the larynx could be close to one another, or could be apart from one another, and according to which we have voice sounds or voiceless sounds. Here in point number A, we have just given you an example of what we mean by voiceless sounds, which is the S is a good example. In other words, if I say S, this means that the vocal folds are apart from one another. They are not close. So the air passes easily, and as such we have what we call voiceless sounds, such as the S. You do not feel anything once you say an S. But if we pronounce the Z, for example, not the S, in the Z, while pronouncing it, the vocal folds are close to one another. So while the air is going out of the lungs, indeed we have what we call vibration. Vibration, in other words, if you put your finger in here and you say zzz, you will feel that there is something happens in your larynx. Why? Because the vocal folds are close together, so the air, while coming out of the lungs, indeed it forces the vocal folds to be apart from one another, and as such we have what we call voiced sounds, such as the Z. Of course, in addition to the S, we have other voiceless sounds. The S is voiceless, means that the vocal folds are apart. The T is voiceless. The F is voiceless as well. The F is voiceless. But at the same time, we have voiced sounds such as the Z, Z, for example, or the, or V, or B. While the P is voiceless, the B is a voiced sound. Now, if I want to describe a given word phonetically, if I want to write a given word in English phonetically or even in Arabic phonetically, we have to use a new system which is called IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. If you go to Oxford Dictionary or the Webster, you will find out that words are described phonetically in these two dictionaries and others, of course, using the IPA system. So the IPA is an international phonetic alphabet. In other words, if I say there, if I want to describe it phonetically, I use the sounds described by the IPA system. Now, as I have said, we differentiate between sounds using three criteria. The first criteria that we have already covered, which is voicelessness. In other words, sounds are divided into two parts. Voiced sounds, these sounds are pronounced when the vocal folds are close to one another. But the voiceless sounds are the sounds which are pronounced when the vocal folds are apart from one another, such as the sa, the example that I have just given. The first place of articulation, as I have already said, and now I'm going to repeat, is the glottal sounds. In other words, the larynx. In here, the air is also modified, and as such, sounds coming or modified in this place, which is the larynx, are called glottal sounds. An example is the sound ah in Arabic, for example, or ah in a word like wa'a, because water is sometimes pronounced by some English people wa'a. This sound ah is called a glottal sound. So the first place of articulation is the sound is the larynx, because in the glottal, by the glottal, let me say, a glottal stop is a sound made in the larynx. So it is called the first of articulation. And as such, I have said, we will refer to sounds produced at this place of articulation as glottal sounds, because the space found between the vocal folds, which are the glottis, this place gives us, let me say, the right to name them according to it. So we have glottal stops. Stops because they are also stops, but with regard to the word stop, I will explain it later. So far, I just want you to know that sounds are divided into two parts: sound, voice sounds, or voiceless ones. The other thing, the other criteria is the places of articulation. The first place of articulation that we have to know is what we call the glottis. And the sound, or once these sounds are made, because we modify the air at that point, these sounds are called glottal stops in general, glottal stops. Of course, there are many other places of articulation, and we will start by the second place of articulation, which is the bilabial sounds. What we mean by bilabial sounds are the sounds that are made using the two lips. Sounds that are made using the two lips are called bilabial sounds. An example is the first sound in the two words pet or bite. So the first two sounds that are made using the place of articulation, which is bilabial, in other words, made by my two lips, are the P and the B, as the example mentioned in here. The second sound is what we call labiodental sound. Labiodental sounds because we use the lips, and at the same time we use, let me say, the teeth, and as such they are called labiodental sounds. A good example is the two sounds, the F and the V. The F and the V are called labiodental sounds. The other one, dental sounds. An example of the dental sounds is the two sounds th and the. Th and the are called dental sounds. The th and the. This is the fourth place of articulation. For example, an example is the first sound in thin or then, because we have two sounds that are called dental sounds, which are the th and the. By the way, in some articles and in other books, sometimes they are called interdental. For me, I think it would be enough to say that they are dental sounds. So if you say dental sounds or interdental sounds, of course, they are both of them are correct, but for me, it would be enough to say dental sounds. In the first lecture, if you remember, I said that one of the most important places of articulation that we always use in order to produce speech sounds are what we call the alveolar ridge. And I said last time that the alveolar ridge is the ridge, the place that comes right after the teeth. You can touch it, you can feel it using the tip of your tongue, like this. Any sound which is made via the tip of the tongue being pressed against the alveolar ridge is called alveolar. So the T is an alveolar sound because I said ta. The da is an alveolar sound. The sa is an alveolar sound. The z is also an alveolar sound. All of them are made through pressing the tip of the tongue against the alveolar ridge, and as such they are called alveolar sounds. We have two sounds that are called post-alveolar or alveopalatal. Sometimes are called palata-alveolar, but other linguists call them alveopalatal. We call them palata-alveolar or alveopalatal because indeed not only the alveolar ridge is involved in their pronouncing, and not only the palatal, but both of them. They are not alveolar, they are not palatal, they are alveopalatal because they are made in a place of articulation which is between the two places, the alveolar ridge and the palatal, and as such they are called alveopalatal or palata-alveolar. I mean, both of them are the same. These two sounds, for example, are the sh and the ja. The sh, like she, or the ja, judge, both of them are called alveopalatal. This is what I have just said. Yes. And this point, I think I have to read it because it's important a little bit. Sounds in which there is a constriction between the front of the tongue and the hard palate are called palatal sounds, and as such sound like the glide. It is called glide, which is the ya in a word like yes. This sound, the ya, in a word like yes, the first sound in the word yes is called palatal. It is called palatal, which is the ya. And indeed, we have other sounds that are made through pressing the back of the tongue against the roof of the mouth, and these sounds are called velar sounds. An example, like the word cool or go. The ka and the ga are velar sounds. They are called velar sounds. Of course, I can add another sound, which is the ing, in a word like ring. The ing is also a velar sound. So, in English, we say that we have three sounds that are called velar. They are the ka, the ga, and the ing. these sounds are called velar sounds. To summarize the lecture, at the beginning I have said that we have a criteria in order to differentiate between sounds, in order to help sounds have their own identities. Indeed, we have 3 criteria that are used in order to differentiate between sounds. I will give you an example using the 3 criteria in the 2 sounds which are the sa and the ta, or the sa and the da. Let me make them the sa and the da. I can differentiate between these 2 sounds, the sa and the da, using the first criteria, which is voicelessness. In other words, whether the sound is voiced, in Arabic majhur, or the sound is voiceless, in Arabic mahmus. According to this criterion, sounds are voiced sounds. In this case, the vocal folds are apart from one another, so the air passes easily from the vocal folds. If they are apart from one another, we have what we call voiceless sounds. Example, the sound sa, the sound ta, the sound ka, the sound tha in English, and the sound sha as well. Fa is also voiceless. This means the vocal folds are apart from one another, open when the air goes out of the lungs. According to this criterion, voicelessness, we also have voiced sounds. An example is the sound Z, because once I pronounce it, the vocal folds are close to one another. They are not apart from one another. We have voiced sounds such as the Z, the D, the, and the, for example. Of course, ja is also a voiced sound. After finishing the first criterion that I use in order to differentiate between sounds, which is voicelessness, and as I have said, I will give you the 2 sounds, the sa and the da, as examples. If I use the first criteria, the sa will be considered voiceless, minus voiced, or voiceless, and the da will be considered a voiced sound or minus voiced. In other words, the first criteria says that sa is voiceless and the da is voiced. One of them is minus, one of them is plus. Of course, the da is not minus. In other words, it is a voice sound because the vocal folds are close to one another. So once the air goes out of the body, it forces the vocal folds to be apart from one another, and as such we call them voiced sounds or a voice sound if we are talking about the D. After finishing the first criterion, which is voicelessness, we do talk about another criterion, which is places of articulation. With regard to places of articulation, we differentiate between sounds depending on the place from which the sound is pronounced. I said the first criterion that the first place of articulation that I can use is bilabial, my lips, bilabial sounds. And they are called bilabial sounds simply because the sounds are pronounced using or through my 2 lips. And as such, I've called them bilabial sounds. And you know that bi means 2. Bilabial, the 2 lips are involved in pronouncing these 2 sounds. So bilabial sounds are the P and the B. After the bilabial sounds, we have what we call alveolar sounds. And the alveolar sounds are the sounds that are made by the tip of the tongue being pressed against the alveolar ridge. Examples: the sa, the za, the da, and, for example, the z, as I have said. Of course, ta is also, and the da are also alveolar sounds. Then we have another place or places of articulation. One of these is the place which is between the alveolar and the palatal. Once I pronounce sounds from that place, such as the sha and the ja, then these sounds are called alveopalatal or palatal alveolar, the same. An example is the sha and the ja. And as I have said, I will give you the two sounds, the sa and the da, as examples to be compared to one another. If I use places of articulation as another criterion, then the sa will be considered alveolar and the da is also will be considered alveolar. So we have now two criteria. The first, voicelessness. Sa voiceless, da voiced. The other criteria is, or criterion, is the place of articulation. According to this criterion, the sa is alveolar and the da is as well alveolar. Sounds also could be pronounced using the velar. In this case, we have three sounds. The first is the ka. Notice that the back of the tongue is pressed against the roof of the mouth. Ka. And we have ga. And we have eng. If I just would like to give you another example using the two criteria to compare between two velar sounds, I will choose the ka and the ga. If I want to compare them between them, I will say that the ka is voiceless while the ga is voiced. The ka is velar and the ga is velar as well. So using this criterion, which is voicelessness, helps me differentiate between the two sounds, the ka and the ga. Next lecture, inshallah, I will use or talk about the third criterion, which is called manner of articulation. Manner of articulation. This criterion is used in order to differentiate also between sounds. Bi'idhnillah, next lecture, I will start the lecture talking about manner of articulation, and after finishing this means we will be then able to differentiate between any two sounds in English using three criteria. The first, voicelessness, the sound is voiced or voiceless. The second, places of articulation, the sound is velar or alveolar or glottal, or for example alveopalatal or bilabial, and so on and so forth. And then the third criteria or criterion, which is manner of articulation, something that I will talk about inshallah next lecture. I would like to thank you, and I hope that the lecture is clear, and of course your questions will be welcome anytime, especially in the direct lectures. Thank you so much.